Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session on GCP Network Performance Monitoring and Diagnostics Customer Panel. My name is Shishir Agrawal. I'm a product manager in the cloud networking team, and I lead Google's efforts around network performance monitoring and diagnostics. So I'm sure all of you are having a great next so far, and you have probably attended sessions where you learned more about Google's cloud networking solutions, whether it's high-performance network, global VPCs, load balancers, and other capabilities we have. While that's great and that enables you to migrate your workloads to Google Cloud, but on a day-to-day basis, when you are managing your network, as network admins and operators, you want to make sure that you can do that very, very efficiently. And one of the big charters that we have within Google Cloud Networking is to make the day-to-day operations much, much easier and seamless, right? And I lead the charter to provide a set of tools and capabilities for our customers to make that easier, to allow you to better monitor, manage, diagnose your network. As part of that, we have been talking to a lot of customers over the past few months, working closely with our user research team, and we have talked to over 20+ customers. So the goal of this session is really to talk to you about some of those learnings that we had from those user interviews. I have with me two of our customers from Global Payment and Cardinal Health, along with a partner, Kentic, and Gargi from our engineering leadership team. This is definitely a big area of focus for us, and we would love to hear from more of you around your pain points around in this space and partner with you. So again, this is the panel, and we'll introduce the panel shortly. Again, I want to thank all my panelists today here for joining with me in this session. Just as a reminder, hopefully you probably saw this in other sessions as well, we are actually going to use Dory Q&A as well, along with, if any of you have questions, please line up along the mic. But you can also go to the next app, click the Dory Q&A link there, and actually post questions on Dory. And towards the end of the session, I'll be looking at Dory and answering those questions. But what it also allows us is to actually answer those questions even after the session. Okay? So feel free to post questions during the session or even after the session, and we'll definitely make sure to respond to those questions. So quick agenda for today. We'll do, again, spend quite a bit of time on panel discussion, learning from our customers. I'll also talk about some of the solutions we have today for monitoring and diagnostics within GCP. And then Kentic, who is one of our partners, will talk about how they leverage some of GCP products to provide visibility to our customers and show a quick demo. And then, obviously, we'll leave enough time for audience Q&A. So with that in mind, let's jump on to the panel portion of this session. And I'll start with having each of the panelists quickly introduce themselves. So Ed, would you like to introduce yourself?
Ed Hammond, Senior Enterprise Architect for Cardinal Health. We're a large Fortune 500 kind of company based in Dublin, Ohio.
Kelly Wang, Senior Solution Architect from Global Payments. We are a global payment provider worldwide.
Thank you. Justin Ryburn, Director of Solutions Engineering at Kentic, and we'll talk a little later about who Kentic is and what we do, but as Shishir mentioned, we're a partner of Google's and happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm Gargi Adhav, so I'm partner in crime with Shishir on the network performance diagnostics initiative within Google, and I manage the config distribution pipeline that you don't see, that is hidden behind everything that you configure, and external facing cloud routing, cloud router, VPC peering. So we see a lot of problems or hear a lot from our customers in terms of when they do configurations, what are their pain points. So we're here to hear from our panelists on some of their pain points and hear from you as well, and then we'll talk about what we can do to address it.
Thank you, everyone. Let's jump right in. I'll start with just asking, like, what are one or two key pain points that you have around network performance monitoring and diagnostics, especially when you look at your infrastructure or applications running in cloud? And maybe if you can give some examples of some issues that have happened or some outages that might have happened. And Ed, maybe I'll start with you here.
Sure. I've got the mic, so I'll start. One of the problems is we have a large staff and things are moving very, very quickly. Things are changing all the time. I'll give you a case in point. Recently, a very skilled network engineer was trying to work on a particular problem between shared VPCs and that kind of thing. And he had totally forgotten that we had multiple other VPCs, and he put a static route in one of the VPCs, which propagated to on-prem routers and took out routes. And that wasn't very nice. That was one that was, if he had just stepped back and actually looked at the configuration a little bit better, he would have found it. He knew it was there, but had forgotten about it. It didn't scream at him before he put in that configuration. There was another one that we had where we had a database release, application release that we were moving to the cloud, and they put the database in one VPC, and they put the application in another VPC. That's not very good for performance. So we were exiting Iowa and going up to Chicago and back to Iowa for every single database call. That had significant latency. So again, in that case, it was on the console, and everybody looked at it, including me, and we didn't see it. It wasn't intuitively obvious to us. So if we had a clear methodology there, that would help us.
That's a great example. Thank you.
Thank you. So the challenge we're facing is that we have a different workload. We have a different requirements, which requires some of the workload we put in a shared VPC. Some they are in their own VPC. So the challenge we're facing is we want to know at any single point how many VPCs we own. Within a particular VPCs, how many projects are associated, how many public IPs we own. And within each, if we change a firewall rules, how many VMs will get impact. So currently the challenges we're facing is that there are missing a single pane of view from a network monitoring perspective. And those are one of the challenges we're facing. The other things we're facing is if we want to do some connectivity diagnosis, we want to know point to point, is there a connectivity between them? And if there are, what's the latencies between them? If there's no connectivity, what might be the issue? So those are the challenges we're facing today.
Thank you, Kelly. So Justin, I mean, we heard from our customers, but as a partner, I'm sure you talk to a lot of customers. So can you share your views on what do you hear from customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we talk to customers about the performance monitoring and diagnostics challenges that they have in their network and in their infrastructure in Google Cloud, it usually comes down to what I'll call three buckets. And I think Ed and Kelly hit on a number of those. It's cost. So using Ed's example of traffic exiting one VPC and coming back into another, performance is one aspect of that, but there's a cost to that as well. So if you optimize your applications and you have the application, the database running in the same VPC, you avoid cost of that traffic hairpinning, if you want to phrase it that way. The second one is performance, as Ed mentioned, and then the third bucket that we hear a lot from customers is security. Right? How do I know that the policies and the security posture that I think I have, both in my physical data center as well as in my cloud, are actually being enforced? Is traffic getting through that shouldn't be, and am I unintentionally blocking traffic that I otherwise need to allow through as part of my security infrastructure? Because configuring ACLs in the VPCs can be fairly complex as your environment scales out. So those are kind of the three buckets of challenges that we hear from customers when we talk to them.
Thanks, Justin. So Gargi, I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have actually talked to a lot of customers, and a lot of these themes we have heard. Would you like to elaborate a bit on maybe something else that we have heard from customers?
Yeah, sure. So when Ed was talking, and then Justin as well, about the performance thing, that is like a resounding thing that we've heard from customers, especially when their performance deteriorates, that they today don't have no way of knowing why is it deteriorating, where is the bottleneck, and so on. So that has been a resounding thing. The other part of it is the configuration changes. And sometimes, if it is a syntax error, then yes, obviously, GCP will throw an error and you will find out immediately. But syntactically, your configuration could be correct, it could be accepted by the VMs and everything is fine, but then suddenly there will be some impact on your traffic a few minutes later. And sometimes they don't even have visibility because they do have multiple network admins and security admins who are both changing things. So maybe nothing changed in the networking configs, but the security admin came and added an extra firewall rule or something, and then it goes all the way up to troubleshooting your network, and then the app admins come and say, hey, like my service is not available to this XYZ customer, and go and see it's a network problem. So figuring out what the root cause and the pain point is and where exactly something went wrong is a resounding thing we've heard from many of you.
Thanks, Gargi. So I guess, if I were to just summarize this, I think we heard a bit about security is obviously top of mind. How do you make sure you have the right security posture and firewall rules? Kelly talked about configuration changes and how do you make sure any kind of connectivity issues, especially in a hybrid environment, you can actually make sure that any of the configuration changes would not cause that connectivity issue. And Ed actually had a very good example of somebody changing that static routes and causing connectivity to be broken. So just by show of hands, what percentage of network outages and performance issues happen because of configuration changes? Anybody wants to take a guess at the percentage here? 80? Anybody else? 60. Actually, that's very close. The data is all, the data shows that about 75% of network outages and configuration happen because of configuration-related changes. And yeah, both of you are closer. Again, I think the point being that hopefully most of you in the room are related to the network team, and you can realize that configuration does cause a lot of outages. Right? Okay, so moving on to the next part, maybe the next question I would like to ask the panelists is about some of the tools and solutions they are using to address these challenges and do monitoring and diagnostics, right? Whether it's homegrown, whether it's Google provided solutions, or whether it's a third party. So maybe Kelly, I would like to start with you here, and if you want to talk about some solutions you use.
All right. So today we are have stacks of solutions and tools together to help us with monitoring and diagnosis. From the platform perspective, we are turn on all the VPC flow logs, which give us the network performance information. They also provide security posture for us, so we know from a particular IP what resource is touching and at what time. So, and those are at the VPC flow log level. We also turn on the firewall rule logs as well. So those give us the firewall rules changing information and what are the allowed, what are the denied firewall rules. Other than the platform provided capabilities, we also rely on the traditional layer 2, layer 3 tools as well, like traceroute. And also on top of that, we also want to get network topology information. And those are, we are currently introduce a third party tool.
We too use firewall logs very heavily. I'll give you an example. We have instances that are running on premise, and we bring them into the cloud. As we bring them into the cloud, we're trying to do microsegmentation. So we're using a particular firewall rule that we apply to all these instances, and then we look at the log traffic of that, and then we can lock down the instances with the specific firewall rule logs. That turned out to be a significant amount of effort that we had to develop these tools about. So having intelligent firewall log management would be very helpful, as well as explaining that to application developers who don't necessarily understand how all their applications work. I'm sure our developers are unique in that regard. As well as the performance. Kelly mentioned the performance, so we've actually installed third-party tools where at different points in our network we have instrumentation points, and so we can tell response times between different segments. And that turns out to be really sensitive to our applications. 2 or 3 milliseconds seems to be very sensitive at times.
Okay. Thank you. So apparently, I mean, both of you are using VPC firewall logs and VPC flow logs. And again, just quick poll among the audience, how many of you are using VPC flow logs and firewall logs for monitoring or diagnostics? Okay, so not a whole lot. So again, in the later part of the presentation, I'll actually talk a bit more about VPC flow logs and firewall logs. But that is, actually, we see that a lot among our customers using VPC flow logs and firewall logs. So.
Why not contact me afterwards?
That's my answer too.
Yeah, and I'll actually talk about some of the partner ecosystem we have in a subsequent slide, but definitely we are, again, with Google, we are obviously providing you core capabilities as part of the platform, but we have an open ecosystem where we have a lot of partners that integrate with us via the logs or the APIs. So a lot of customers do that. Okay, so the next question I would like to ask is, if you had a magic wand and if you were to wish, I would say, 1 or 2 key capabilities that GCP would provide you that would make the life of you as a network admin, operator, enterprise architect easier, what would those 1 or 2 things would be? And Kelly, maybe
I'll
can start that.
So I want to have a platform provide me a view, which this view can, even the operator, the operation team, they're not be a very skilled network engineer. They can come into this tool, and they are, from this platform provided view there, they can find the topology information. So they can see what are the VPCs we own. Within each VPC, what my topology views. And inside this VPC, inside the per subnet, how many VMs are associated with, how many public IPs are associated with a per VPC, how many public IPs are associated under our account. And also, I wish we have this view capabilities. We can monitoring the network performance instead of going to the VPC flow logs. We have that information in the flow log, but it's very time-consuming to get that information today. So if we have this view, that would be ideal for operation team in case there's incidents happening, they can do the first phase triage without involving a whole bigger team. And also, if this tool provided the diagnostic capability, so they can provide a point-to-point connectivity information and tell what are the latencies are, and those will be the things I think my top wish list.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Ed?
I have to echo a lot what Kelly said. One of the other things about the performance is that you can use that as a canary as to whether something's going wrong. For example, if I know that I normally have traffic going from US Central to, I don't know, Europe or whatever, and it's supposed to take so much time, and then all of a sudden that starts inching up, I know that I'm doing something somewhere that could indicate a failure. And now, we always want the network to be highly resilient, but I want to be able to detect that and alarm, not necessarily alarm, but give trend analysis so that I can understand when something has gone wrong. So sometimes those are very, very subtle signals. And if you don't look at it all the time, I don't know about you, but I don't look at all these reports all the time. If you don't look at it all the time, you can miss these things. Was it 1.2 seconds or was it 1.7 seconds? I don't remember, right? And so having a tool that would be very sensitive in that regard. The other one is in the firewall rules. When somebody's going to put something in, knowing what the effect is before it happens would be a really good thing to have. Before I go change a static route, knowing before it happens that I'm going to have a BGP propagation problem, that would be really, really nice to know. So I think that, with a lot of capabilities that Google can do, they're in a great position to help us with that.
Great. Thank you. So I think what I heard about, just to summarize some of the things, right? I think Kelly mentioned about getting a topology view, maybe getting better performance metrics right out of the box, as opposed to mining a lot of data and mining a lot of information. And I think Ed's wish is how they can manage configuration changes, which is even before things happen, right? So, and I know Gargi here has the magic wand, I think. So, Gargi, do you want to address some of what we have heard from the customers and maybe talk a bit about at least how Google is looking at addressing some of these problems?
Sure. So obviously, like Shishir mentioned, we have VPC logs and VPC flow logs, firewall logs that help you troubleshoot your problems and help us troubleshoot if those logs are enabled. But looks like not many of you have been using it so far. But some of our partners, including some here, they also shared that they have those logs and then they write scripts on top of those logs to fine-tune and identify where is the needle in the haystack. But one of the things that we've been hearing is finding the needle in the haystack, where the Google can help you with that. And that's exactly what we are going to do, because there is a lot of information, like Kelly said. It's hidden and it's hard to go and navigate because you don't even anticipate that, oh, this thing under this tree would have some information in there. So that is definitely something we can help with. But one thing I'd like to ask all of you, because we've heard so much about configuration problems from all our customers and Justin here as well. How many of you are afraid to make configuration changes or have config change as a pain point? Like, if we can have a show of hands, is that one of your biggest pain points? How many of you here have that? That you'd like to have more? Okay. Slowly raising the hands.
You must not make any changes, obviously.
Yeah. Cool. So that is an area definitely that we are looking into. And if you are interested in solving that pain point, do connect with us offline. Shishir is definitely driving this effort from the product side. We also have a UX research lead, I don't know if you can, back there, who's engaging with a lot of customers and finding out their pain points so that we can feed it into the products that we are building. That is definitely an area, a magic wand.
Thanks, Gargi. And again, I think as Gargi said, right, and some of the pain points that you heard about, whether it's topology, providing better performance information, or allowing our customers to diagnose connectivity issues due to configuration, or enabling them to make configuration changes more confidently. So we understand all of these pain points. We would like to actually hear more from any of you who has insights into those use cases. But again, watch out. And we are looking at these problems and how we can solve these problems. Okay.
Yeah, one of the things is also customers ask us, whenever there is a problem, there is an app admin who's separate from the network admin. So they say, just tell me whether it's an application problem or is a networking problem. So even getting to that point, it takes them time before they figure that out, and obviously person hours. So that is another area that we can help you with. So do connect with us offline if these are some of your pain points.
So thank you, everyone. I think that was great insights and great feedback, and I hope all of you attending could hopefully relate to some of these pain points and could see how Google is looking to address this. So I want to actually kind of change gears a little bit and talk about what are the existing solutions that are available today that a lot of our customers use, and actually you can go back and use as well. Right? So one of the key capabilities that we have is VPC flow logs. And again, the idea here is that we record a sample of the network flows that are sent or received by the VM instances. Those flows are aggregated every 5 seconds, and actually, with a new capability that's currently in beta, you can actually configure that interval. And a lot of our customers use VPC flow logs for a variety of use cases. The first one is obviously network monitoring, where they can look at the flow data, look at kind of who are the top talkers, where is the traffic coming from, even use that data for optimizing their expenses or network. Security, again, a lot of customers pipe VPC flow logs to maybe a SIM solution and look at whether the connections are happening from legit IP addresses or not. So then they can apply the right kind of policies. You can view these VPC flow logs in a Stackdriver, and then also you can export it to Cloud PubSub or BigQuery or a third-party solution like SIMS. And one of the key capabilities that actually a lot of you who might have used VPC flow logs have asked is around how can you reduce the volume of VPC flow logs? So again, we have some new controls available now, which is in beta, to actually allow you to reduce the VPC flow logs volume. So you can control the time interval in which the aggregation happens. So by default, it happens every 5 seconds, but now you can set it to 30 seconds, a minute, 10 minutes, or 15 minutes. Similarly, for log entry sampling, so when we write the logs to the database, there is a sampling that happens, and by default, the sampling ratio is 0.5 or 50%, but now actually you can control it. You can set it to 100%, or on the extreme end, you can set it to 0%. So that's another control that's available, along with metadata annotations, where the notion is that when we write VPC flow logs, we actually write the source and destination VM instance names. We write the geographical information in terms of regions. So all of that, you can actually choose to not annotate your VPC flow logs, because your use case might be simply to know the IP addresses. So those are the controls that are available to you. And the other key capabilities is firewall logs. So this allows you to actually audit, verify, and analyze the effects of your firewall rules, right? So you can actually understand if a firewall rule that you have, it is doing what it's intended to do. So for example, if it's blocking the traffic that you want it to block, right? So you enable these firewall rules logging on a per rule basis, and unlike VPC flow logs, these are not sampled. So these are available for every connection, and you can see them in a Stackdriver logging or export it to PubSub or BigQuery. In addition to logging, within the Cloud Console, we also have very, very rich monitoring capabilities. So on the service pages, and I'm taking an example of VPN here. If you go to the VPN page, you can actually see some key information for monitoring out of the box, right? You can see what is the VPN tunnel status, if it's green, as in if it's established, or it might be red, which means it's not seeing any incoming packets. This is some basic level of monitoring that you see on the service pages. And similarly, you will see for interconnect. But then we publish a lot of metrics that you can see in Stackdriver. So Stackdriver has out-of-the-box dashboards. For example, if you go to resources, under Stackdriver, under services, VPN, we actually are now publishing metrics such as tunnel status, received bytes, packet loss, which is dropped packets, which is one of the key metrics that customers want to look at. And then you can set alerts on these metrics, depending on the thresholds you want. So you can say, if my packet drop is less than, or is more than whatever, 0.01%, I want to get an alert. So, but these dashboards are available out of the box. Okay. And last, but again, very important, we have a rich partner ecosystem. So to some of the questions that somebody was asking earlier, we have integrations with SIM partners for VPC flow logs and firewall logs. So you can send data to Sumo Logic or Splunk solutions. A lot of customers use next-generation firewalls, such as Palo Alto or Fortinet or Checkpoint, where, again, that's sitting inline, and it has full visibility of the traffic that's flowing through your network. And for compliance reasons, we have, again, a lot of vendors or partners who integrate with VPC flow logs. And again, you'll hear from one of the partners, Kentic, in a minute, but that's another integration that's available. So with that, I think it's a good segue into the last section here, where I would invite Justin to talk about Kentic and show us a quick demo.
All right, thank you, Shishir. So for those who aren't familiar with Kentic, I'll be brief on this, but just a kind of a quick overview about who Kentic is. We're about a 5-year-old startup that's based here in San Francisco. We've seen good success over the last 5 years across what we call digital enterprise, as well as the service provider community. This is how our platform is built. So as Shishir mentioned, the Google VPC flow logs can be exported to a pub sub bus, and then basically you configure your VPCs to send those logs to that bus, and then you configure our system to listen to subscribe to that conversation, pull those flow logs back into our system, and then we enrich that with a lot of different pieces of context. So, flow logs out of the box from Google give you a lot of good information, as Shishir mentioned, around what's the VM source, what's the zone source, what's the project source. There's a lot of good, rich information that's in there. But we also have some additional metadata that we'll enrich with as well, things from Kubernetes or Istio. If you're running those type of service mesh setups, we can find out a little bit more information about pods and nodes and so forth. And then once we have those logs into our system, I'll give you some examples of what some of the UI screenshots would look like. We give you all kinds of insights about what your traffic looks like in both our UI as well as give you an API that's available to pull that data out if you want to integrate it with another system. And then all kinds of proactive notifications and alerts that you can use to find out proactively about changes in your network environment, in your VPCs. So what are some of the use cases, and why would people use Kentic? And a lot of it comes down to the persona of the user, right? So for our network operations and our network engineering teams, kind of to the point that Gargi made earlier, the age-old question, is it the application or is it the network, right? And so, using Kentic and looking at the flow logs and finding out, am I seeing an increase in latency for just a single application? All the applications in a single VPC can give me some clues and some indicators into, is my network performance issue, is it a network performance issue or is it an application performance issue, which is really powerful to our network operations and our network engineering users. On the SecOps side, it comes back to, I think, what I was mentioning earlier about security. Is the security posture that I believe I have enforced actually working the way that I believe it is once my configuration gets applied? Am I allowing things through that shouldn't be? Am I blocking things that I mean to allow through? On the SRE and DevOps side, there's a lot of trying to figure out what applications are talking to what other applications. As I mentioned, we have a rich API that allows you to pull some of this data out, which allows you to automate a lot of your systems to do some automation built on top of changes to network traffic patterns or certain traffic patterns that you see in your environment. And then for the executives, we have sort of a higher level dashboard so they can get a view of how many VPCs do I have, how much traffic is coming in and out of them, how is my cloud network performing. Just some screenshots as examples that might be interesting to network engineering and network operations. This is what we call a Senki diagram, and this shows coming out of one particular project that's spread across US East and US West, what are the destination IP addresses that traffic is flowing to, and what is the application? In this particular case, of course, it's a secure web application. So as a network engineering or a network operations user, I can quickly see how my network is performing. For security operations, again, like I said, it's really about what are there data exfiltration events going on? Is my security policy being applied the way that I think it's being applied? This is where the proactive notifications come in really useful, is I can get notifications when there's a new event that takes place in the network and then drill down and get a lot more detail about what that network event is. Latency. So this is something that is a really powerful feature that Google enables by putting latency information in each one of the flow logs that they export, now I can look at on a per application basis, what is my latency, and am I seeing an increase in the latency of my application? So in this particular example here on the slide, you see just one application out of many has a huge spike in its latency. So that gives me an indicator that likely this is a network or an application latency issue and not a network issue. And so I can try and defend myself as a networking guy and say, no, it's not the VPC network, and it's something to do with your application. And then, like I said, for the executives, a dashboard that shows a lot of different views of how is the network performing at a high level, how much traffic do I have, where is it coming from, where is it going to, and how much is it costing me. So as an example, more concrete, we here at Kintic have an application we call the Sock Shop that's running on GCP. So this is an example workload. It's a microservices containerized application that has various pieces to it. It has a cart, it has a catalog, and so as a user that runs this e-commerce website, there are a couple things that I can look at. So the first thing that I look at is a dashboard that shows me all of my VPC traffic for this application, shows me my traffic zone to zone, region to region, project to project, so I can kind of see how are the various pieces of my application running. And to Ed's point earlier, I can try and look for, do I have inefficiencies in where my workloads have been placed? Do I have the cart or the catalog running in a different VPC than what I have my database running in? And is that something that I could better optimize? And then this is another view that gives us some information about this microservices application that's running. It's showing me the various pieces of the application and what's talking to what. So my front end website, for example, talking back to the sock shop, the catalog talking to the cart. There's a lot of different interactions that are happening in that application, and I can see how each one of those maps to each other. Whether that be bits per second, whether that be packets per second, or even latency information, I can drill down and get a lot more information about how the application is performing and look for inefficiencies in how that application is performing.